Thank you everyone for joining me as we delve into a really interesting aspect of digital communication, which is digital code switching in digital platforms. So, firstly, I will introduce some of my data resources, partly from Slack and mainly from WeChat and Zoom meetings. But unfortunately, I was not allowed to record Zoom meetings based on the policy of ISS's office. So I record them all in my field notes. So this exploration, particularly relevant in higher education, reflects on Irving Goffman's dramaturgical theory. This theory suggests life is akin to a theatrical performance where we all don various personas, just like this mask here. Our daily interactions, considered as performances, showcase the front stage, our public persona, shaped to meet societal expectations. Meanwhile, the backstage reveals our more authentic self, reserved for those with whom we have close personal bonds. Through data and personal observations, I will demonstrate today how this distinction blurs in digital communications, presenting a challenge to Goffman's theory. First thing first, about the code switching. While often considered merely a linguistic shift, serves a deeper function. It refers to the practice of alternating between two or more languages or varieties of language in conversations. So this phenomenon occurs in multilingual communities where speakers share more than one language in common. It can happen within a single conversation, in a single sentence, or even within a single phrase. It just enables us to navigate between different assumed roles across various scenes of interaction. But in digital platforms, this shift is not solely linguistic, but also cultural and contextual, merging the front stage and backstage in unique ways. Before moving forward, I have a question for you. If you are a second language speaker, how you incorporate your first language or your first language in your second language speaking? So here I have some authentic data provided by L2 speakers working in my site. So when a new colleague is introduced on Slack, individuals such as Kevin here may use code switching to express their cultural identity from the outside by saying good afternoon in English and Spanish. Similarly, when communicating with my supervisor on Slack, who is originally from China, I often weave in Chinese phrases to swiftly convey information, like discussing the location of an event in the Huangpu area. And this is the translation on the Chinese character in Huangpu area. And this dynamic is even more pronounced in our Zoom meetings about this location. So those are all background information. Now we come to the formal data analysis. So here is the most important part in our meeting, Zoom meeting, and it comes to an excerpt. So as said, this hotel is right in the popular district in Shanghai, which is the Huangpu area. And Yuhong, who is my supervisor, said, "Is that where Dongfang Mingzhu is located?" I said close, but no. It is opposite the Huangpu Qu. Do you know Nanjing Lu? Yuhong said, "Oh, I think I know where the venue is now. Thank you for mentioning that. It's much clearer. I've been there many years ago, and it was really fancy. 那边有好多人啊，我记得我还吃了一家特别好吃的餐厅，叫什么来着？" And then she paused to think and looked somewhere else. And here's the translation in English about the code switching she made here. There were so many people, and I remember I went to a really good restaurant, but I couldn't recall the name. never mind, let's get back on track. So, how far is the hotel from the subway? So, during this Zoom meeting, which is inherently a front stage because it's a professional setting and we are talking about work-related tasks regarding the event venue. And code switching can introduce elements of the backstage into the conversation. Here's how the elements of code switching in the given dialogue blur the line between front stage and backstage. Since we are talking about the Zoom, these digital platforms, it greatly relates to spatial overlap. So people often use Zoom in private spaces, like home, as I discussed in my digital communicative practices introduction video, that we have several days a week to work from home in the office, that traditionally constitute the backstage. But when they engage in video calls, these private spaces become visible to outsiders, even for the person who attend the video calls, and effectively bringing the backstage into the front stage. And the ability to quickly switch between front stage and backstage roles enhances, which means one might be in a formal meeting one moment and in a casual conversation through a code switching as in data excerpt in another moment, maybe less than in a sec. And without the buffer zones typically present in physical environments such as conference room, meeting room, such physical settings. So these subtopics, which greatly relates to the spatial overlaps, comes from the spatial overlaps. When Yu-Hong brings up the Oriental Pearl here, that she did the code switching just in Mandarin. And then I switched to Huangpu and Nanjing Road here. And using their Chinese name, it creates a sense of familiarity and informality. And this switches the tone from the more formal professional setting to a more personal, intimate interaction. And by switching to Mandarin, Yu-Hong expresses a shared cultural identity with me, definitely. And this momentarily reduces the formal distance that typically characterizes front stage interactions. And Yu-Hong also shares a personal memory related to the location being discussed regarding the Shanghai and the Nanjing Road. So the act of sharing personal experience can be seen as a backstage behavior since she suddenly switched to her mother tongue, which is Mandarin, as it reveals more of individual's personal life, and that wouldn't usually be part of the professional front stage persona. And here is where she conducted the code switching in Mandarin, and here is the translation in English. You can see that's not really relate to our work topic. So it's really triggering here to how the code switching blur the line between the front stage and backstage in just a sec. And another interesting topic is the pause and the shift in gaze here. To remember the name of the restaurant are nonverbal cues that indicate a temporary stepping back from the front stage performance. And Yu-Hong then returns to the primary conversation topic with, never mind, let's get back on track, which signifies a shift back to the front stage. So in this conversation, the Zoom meeting platform acts as a stage that simultaneously allows for front stage performances and backstage expressions. And the digital setup, as I mentioned, at home is essential, and which is so different than in face-to-face meetings in the office, which adds a layer of flexibility for people who attend the video calls, the Zoom meeting. When she pauses to think and shifts her gaze elsewhere, she might look at an object in her home that embodies Chinese culture, which facilitates code switching and her transitions during front stage conversations. And the ease of transitioning between languages on digital platforms like Zoom can obscure the boundaries between the front stage and backstage, enabling interlocutors to maintain professional decorum while also engaging in more personal exchanges that reveal their offstage selves. This can be seen as an adaptation of the face work concept in digital communication when she changed her tone a little bit here to really professional stage. And this is just more to where participants manage their social face while also allowing their authentic self to be momentarily presented, reflecting the complex nature of human interactions in virtual environments. So moving forward, the shift to a casual tone or the use of specific cultural codes like sending a 1 and DD in WeChat to acknowledge a message signals a smooth transition between professional and personal interactions. I personally really love this data, so I hope you enjoy this pretty cultural data, cultural code switching. And this form of code switching does more than span linguistic distances. It merges the front stage and backstage, questioning the rigid boundaries government proposed. So this data was gathered from the Forerunner Volunteers group chat, which my coworker and I established to keep each other informed about our work progress. And we often use Code 1 with volunteers here, and they understand how it functions since they're all Chinese as well, without needing to ask questions like why we need to reply with a yeah, with a 1. And as insider, it's merely a routine check-in on our task without any really personal intentions to use 1. But they use 1 and DD in WeChat for these terms, which are quick ways to bump a message thread to the top of the chat list, demonstrate a casual, almost insider type of communication. 1 can signify a simple affirmation, akin to saying noted or understood. It's more like yep, like a slang in Chinese language. While Didi stands for ding ding in Chinese, a colloquial way of saying that something has been noted or should be paid attention to. This can be a prompt for action or acknowledgement. And this comes to a cultural perspective. In a Chinese cultural context, where WeChat is widely used, there's a high context communication style in which messages are often understood through shared cultural knowledge rather than explicit language. The use of 1 or DD can be seen as an extension of this high context communication. It's efficient and assumes a shared understanding, which may be less prevalent in low context cultures that rely on more explicit communication. And this blurs front stage and backstage. When professionals use these 2 codes on WeChat, they are engaging in a communicative practice that feels informal and personal as they are initially a Chinese internet slang and characteristic of backstage interactions. While still within a professional front stage setting, it indicates a level of comfort and shared understanding that typically belongs to the backstage, but it's occurring within the professional sphere, thereby blending the 2. And in many workplaces, especially in the digital era, the boundaries between professionalism and informality have become increasingly fluid. The use of quick, informal codes like 1 or DD in professional conversations is a representation of this trend, reflecting a workplace culture or somewhere like Chinese workplace cultures that values efficiency and brevity over formality. But remember, this still happens in UPenn's campus. So, but we have this Chinese culture happening in this higher education context. So, my exploration into the digital communication landscape reveals a fascinating interplay between the traditional notions of front stage and backstage behaviors within professional contexts. So, long story short, I find that the digital realm challenges these boundaries and creating a hybrid space where personal and professional identities coexist and interact. And code switching has emerged not merely as a linguistic tool, but as a cultural bridge, fostering connections and intimacy within professional settings. And some adoptions of concise communication styles highlights a broader cultural shift towards brevity and efficiency in certain professional exchanges. And this investigation actually enriches our understanding of face work in virtual environments and demonstrating a nuanced balance between the social face and personal authenticity that participants strive to achieve. And it also points to the transformative effect of high context communication styles on professional interactions, paving the way for a new blend of formality and personal rapport. The insight we've gained underscored the need to reconsider traditional frameworks and professional interaction, given the digital era's unique communicative practices. And as we continue to navigate this evolving landscape, my analysis opens up the further inquiries into how these blended behaviors influence workplace dynamics and individual identities, especially in multicultural higher education contexts. So here I come a question. How does the integration of personal and professional identity through digital platforms affect workplace dynamics and individual identity? So we will have this answer in my another data analysis called digital role fluidity. If you are interested in this data, please go ahead to watch the presentation or the speech. I'm looking forward to your response or any opinions to my data and even my findings. So thank you for your listening and see you.